Hello, hello, my girlie. Welcome to Talks with SAE, the only late night, thought provoking, giggle inducing podcast for my ladies whose days melt into their nights. I'm Zahra, your tulip-loving, heels obsessed host who, just like you, is trying to figure it all out while finding moments of balance, discipline, and self love else. If you haven't already, be sure to follow and subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. Tonight, we're diving into the company you keep, from friendships, romantic relationships, co workers, family dynamics, and even the social media accounts you follow. The company you keep and the vibes we feed off of them affect not just our mental health, but also our personal growth. But before we dive in, I want to remind you to sign up for our email newsletter where you'll get all the exclusive content, free resources, and yes, holiday goodies. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes and in the YouTube description box. All right, let's dive in, shall we? My girlie, have you ever noticed how the people around you can reflect what's going on inside you? It's like when you're in a good place, when you're feeling grounded and clear, you tend to attract people who bring that same energy, right? But when you're struggling or feeling scattered, sometimes it feels like everyone around you is just amplifying that noise. It's like they're heightening it, right? And it's like they're mirroring the chaos back to you. And if you take a second and think about the people closest to you, think about the people closest in your life, your inner circle. Who are they? And what do those groups of people say about where you are in your own journey? Do they inspire you? Do they push you to grow, help you heal? Or are they just yes men? Are they keeping you in a version of yourself that you're outgrowing? I remember a time when I kept holding on to relationships that didn't actually serve me because I was afraid of being alone. And looking back at those relationships and just looking back at it, I see how those relationships were a reflection of my own insecurities and my fears at that time. I I was so scared to make space in my life because I kept thinking, what if nothing better fills the space? What if nothing better comes along when these relationships end, or if these relationships were to end or fizzle out? I was, I, how do I say this? I think what I didn't realize at that time was that holding on to relationships that no longer fit was like choosing to hold a stagnant, uncomfortable, and unhealthy version of myself hostage. And maybe you've been there too, where you're holding on to connections out of fear or out of loyalty or just out of the comfort of familiarity. Maybe deep down, you sense that those connections, those relationships aren't aligned to who you're becoming. They very much are part of you, and that they were a reflection of a version of you that you used to be, but maybe not a reflection of a version of you that you currently are, or a version of you that you strive to be. And letting go of these connections and these ties, it isn't just about releasing them or letting them go. It's about saying to yourself, hey, you know what? I'm ready to grow. I'm ready to evolve. I'm ready for real life. I'm ready for relationships that reflect my growth, not my fears and my insecurities. And the thing is, no one person can be everything to us. And no connection or single relationship is meant to fulfill every need that you have. That's definitely a you problem. That is something that you work on with you, for you. And each relationship, each connection has a purpose and a role to play in our lives. And accepting this has honestly been a huge lesson in my own life. There are friends we call for advice. There are family members we share traditions with. And there's just other people, whether they're acquaintances, work buddies, whoever, where we just laugh with them over the most random, silly things. And I think back to times where I expected certain people or certain friends to show up in ways that just didn't match their personality or their role in my life. And I ended up disappointed. Honestly, I ended up so disappointed and it was so frustrating for me. But the thing I learned was it wasn't their fault. They were simply doing what they knew how to do, and that was being themselves. And not everyone is built for deep conversations. Not every friend or every connection is going to have the emotional capacity to be there for you on your worst days or on your best days, right? Because I know we talk about emotions and connection when it comes to the negative aspects of our lives, the bad days, the hardships, but there's also those emotions and those connections, you know, when it comes to the best of days, when it comes to the highlights, of our lives. When I started seeing my relationships for exactly what they were, when I started seeing the connections and the people in my circle for exactly who they were, it was like a double-edged sword in the sense that there was this like weight lifted because I I realized I was setting absolutely ridiculous expectations for people who I was not supposed to be putting those types of expectations on, right? But then it was also the other side of the sword where I felt so sad and guilty in the sense of number one, I couldn't believe I was holding people to all these expectations that weren't realistic to them, and as a result I was being disappointed, and then as a result those connections and those relationships to me meant that they weren't quality or they weren't meaningful anymore. And then the second part to that was like, because I was doing all of those things, I genuinely was not valuing those relationships when I should have been valuing them for what they were, and realizing that although they may not all be, this deep, insightful connection, they were still a connection and they still added value to my life and to me. And I think what I'm trying to say is I stopped putting pressure on like my fun friend to offer deep life advice. And I stopped expecting my more serious friend to be lighthearted and just like full of jokes. And so I highly recommend you take a look at your own relationships, your own connections, and think about the unique role that each person plays in your life and what they bring to your life. When you honor people for who they truly are, not what you need them to be or what you expect them to be, it allows you to truly build a stronger foundation free from unrealistic expectations. You know that saying, when you don't have expectations, you can't be disappointed? I genuinely believe it's okay to have expectations. It's when you have unrealistic expectations that as adults we get disappointed, right? Because we're trying to like curate every aspect of our life, but you can't make people into puppets. And I feel like that's what unrealistic expectations are, is you trying to make people into puppets in your life when that's not what you should be doing. Which brings me to the good people, the soul feeding people and connections that we have in our lives, in our circles. You know that feeling, that feeling after spending time with someone who just lights you up, right? It's like you leave the conversation, or after you've spent time with them, you feel seen, you feel heard and appreciated for who you are. These are, the people who celebrate your wins, and the people where when you're struggling, they don't try to fix you. They just sit with you. They're present with you. They're present for you. You know, they're there reminding you that you're not alone. Those people, my girlie, those people, I I have come to learn that I myself have those people in my life. And I pray to God that you have those people in your life. And if you feel like you don't have someone like that in your life, I want you to really think about the people in your life. Think about the people in your circle and think about them realistically. Realistically, I think if you really sat down with yourself and you physically wrote down, okay, I don't know, this is Stephanie. I know Stephanie. This is how I met Stephanie. This is how my interactions are with Stephanie. If you just write down those interactions for what they are, not, oh, I want Stephanie to be like this. I wish my relationship with Stephanie was like this. No, just be like, Stephanie, this is how my interactions are with Stephanie. This is how she is to me in terms of like maybe she's an acquaintance or a friend or whoever, but be real about who she is in your life. Think back to the last time you had an uplifting conversation. What was it about? Who was it with? How did you feel afterwards? When I myself think about these moments and these conversations and these experiences, I realize it's not just the content of what we talk about or the type of experience we're having, but it's about how these people and these types of connections and moments and experiences and conversations, how they show up with openness, how they show up with love, how they show up with, how do I say this? It's the fact that they show up, but they show up in such an honest way, and that makes all the difference. They let you be messy, they let you be imperfect, they let you be lost, they let you be human. They're there not to judge you, but to hold space for you. They hold space for you in their lives. And it's so easy for us to take these types of connections and relationships for granted. Sometimes we get so caught up in life and we get so caught up with ourselves and what's going on with us, and everything is me, 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 that we forget to make space for those people who are holding space for us. We forget to make space for those soul feeding connections, and soul feeding connections doesn't necessarily mean that friend that you talk about really personal stuff to, that person that you go to for advice. That's not what I mean by soul feeding. I just mean soul feeding connection in the sense that it leaves you a better you. And sometimes that soul feeding connection is an acquaintance. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Sometimes it's your work BFF. Sometimes it's your mentor. There's different ways to feed our soul. And I hope and pray that you are making a conscious effort to show up and to show appreciation to these soul feeding connections and to these people. You have to let them know that you value them, because, how do I say this? Because when we have those low moments in life and we start to overthink, those are the connections, those are the experiences, the memories that keep us grounded, that remind us that as girlies, we're more than our struggles, we're more than our low moments, So I want you to pause this episode right now, whatever you're doing, wherever you're listening, pause this episode and just call somebody. And if you're not a girly that likes to call, or you think if you call that person, they're not going to answer and it's going to go to voicemail, leave a voicemail. But if you are not a girly that likes to call, then text them and simply just be like, thank you. Thank you for existing. Thank you for allowing me into your life. Thank you for being present. Do not be like, oh, thank you for doing this for me and doing that for me. Like, when we say thank you in that type of way, it makes it about us. And this isn't about making it about you. It's about appreciating people and appreciating the people in our circles or in our circle who enhances our lives in the best way possible. I want to talk about the energy you bring to the relationship, or to your connections, to your circle. Oftentimes we hear about what others are doing for us. Like, oh, is this person showing up for you? Is it a toxic relationship? How are they toxic? But what about you, girlie? What about you? Are you showing up with openness, with understanding, with respect? Or are you carrying frustrations from like other areas of your life into these connections, into these relationships? Sometimes we unknowingly, not sometimes, I think 99% of the time, we unknowingly bring negative energy into our connections and we wonder why things feel off, because we're not doing some introspection, because we're not self aware. And I've noticed this in myself in the past. There would be days where I'm stressed from whatever, whether it's work or I'm dealing with personal stuff. And for me, when I'm really stressed, I tend to shut down and I just don't talk. And it's because I'm in my head a lot. But on the outside, for anyone that comes in contact with me, it looks like I'm angry. It looks like I'm frustrated. And my face is very, I have a very, I don't know what, I forgot what the word is. I make a lot of faces, and you can tell when I'm sad. You can tell when I'm happy. You can tell when I'm stressed. Like the people closest to me can tell. And because I would shut down and I would come off as angry, the people around me would feel that. And they would feel like I was angry at them. And they would ask me, oh, is there something I did? Or what's going on with you? And I was so unaware that I was putting this anger energy out unwillingly because of my stress. But when I started being intentional, when I started really always asking myself, what am I doing? What am I bringing into this? How am I acting today? How am I reacting today? How am I dealing or coping with whatever it is that's happening, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's stressful, whatever. When I started being intentional and really checking in with myself before interacting, it honestly changed a lot. It changed everything. It's about like pausing, taking a deep breath, and asking, what am I bringing to this moment? What am I bringing to this interaction? Am I bringing anger? Am I bringing respect? Am I bringing an openness? Am I bringing understanding in the sense of whatever is going on with me? I'm going to put it to the side so I can be present for this person, for this interaction. And when it's my time or my turn, I'll bring my own issues up if there is an issue with me, or I'll share whatever it is I feel comfortable sharing. But when I'm in this interaction with this person, I'm going to be present in the sense of I'm going to ensure that this person or these people feel an openness from me. They feel a sense of comfort and safety coming from me because that's what I'm putting out, not anger or whatever it is. And I think that's the beauty of self awareness. When we start observing our own patterns, we can catch ourselves before we let our emotions seep into our own connections and into our own relationships, because it's not about being perfect. It's about doing your best to bring kindness and respect and empathy into your interactions with others and into your interactions with the company around you. It's a reminder that your energy and the energy we bring influences not only how others around us feel, but also how we feel about ourselves. And this actually made me think about the other side of the company you keep, the other side of those great relationships and those great connections, and that's the not so good connections. Sometimes you realize that certain relationships are no longer serving you, or maybe you realize that they're even hurting you. And it's, oof. This one is tough because these aren't necessarily bad people. Some of them are, but oftentimes these aren't bad people. They're just people who leave you feeling not great, who maybe leave you feeling depleted rather than fulfilled. And with those types of interactions and those types of dynamics and those types of people in your circle, you really have to pay attention to how you feel after spending time with them, and also pay attention to what you're bringing when you are spending time with them. Are you coming with openness and respect, and safety? And they're not giving that back, and you've talked about it, or you've told them about it, and they just ignore it. Do you feel seen and valued and uplifted, or are you feeling exhausted and small or even resentful? It's okay to acknowledge that not every connection, not every relationship is meant to last forever. You know the saying, the only guarantees in life is death and taxes? For me, the only guarantee in life is change. Because number one, death is part of change, right? And number two, taxes. My girlie, I'm sure you have seen the countless headlines over the years, and just it feels like every day there's a new headline about this company or this person or whatever being able to avoid taxes. So that's not a guarantee. The only guarantee in this life is change. And people grow at different rates. We all change, all of us. All of us change. And we all change and grow at different rates. And sometimes growth means growing apart. And you just have to remember, creating distance isn't something that necessarily, number one, you yourself initiate. Sometimes it just happens. Sometimes the other party or other parties initiate it, but it shouldn't be about blaming others or holding on to resentment because there's distance or you're growing apart. It's really about choosing and prioritizing your mental well being and respecting that maybe the other party or other parties involved are choosing to prioritize their own mental well being. Sometimes letting go is a way of making space for new connections that truly support the person you're becoming. And you may have this urge to pull when the universe and life is pushing, and that's when it starts to feel like crap. That's when I think resentment kind of starts, is because you're just like, why is this happening? Like what's happening here? But that's life. We grow apart, and sometimes your circle, as you grow, gets smaller or it gets bigger, or it's filled with less quality or it's filled with more quality. But it's going to change because, again, the only constant in this life is change. But I can tell you, for every person you start to lose, I promise you, this life, I promise you, the universe and God, your angels, whoever, whatever you believe in, they're making space for new connections and making space for connections that are intended to truly support you and who you're becoming. But they're also doing that for the people on the other end, in terms of, the person who you're drifting away from or who's drifting away from you. Just remember that. But let's touch on the most important relationship you'll ever have, and that's the relationship you have with yourself. When you look at your circle and the company you keep, the commonality within all of that and all of those connections, all of those relationships is you. And you are the most important thing when it comes to how you show up within your own circle. This isn't about knowing your self-worth in this like abstract way or having general self-respect. It's asking yourself how you contribute to the energy and support and direction of the people you keep close. Because, my girlie, the truth is, the way you feel about yourself affects every other relationship, every other connection you're a part of. Think about this. If you're hard on yourself, if you're caught up in an endless cycle of self doubt or constantly pushing down your own needs, that can show up in how you're there or not there for others. Maybe you're the one who's always there to lift everyone else up, but you don't let yourself lean on others because at some point you believed that it's your job to carry your burdens and your experiences of life, good, bad, in between. You believe that it's your job to carry it all alone. Or maybe you're so used to taking on everyone else's pain that you start to neglect your own needs. And that creates a dynamic where you're not showing up as your full self because there's a part of you that you're hiding, even from the people closest to you. So you have to ask yourself, what role are you really playing in your own circle? What role are you really playing within your own connections, within your own relationships? And so many examples came in my head from things I saw when I was a child, and from women I've seen and how they've taken on all those burdens and just how they've never been able to truly be them, never been able to truly have and foster and cultivate healthy relationships because so much is expected from them, because they're expected to always lift others up. They're expected to always take on other people's pain to the point where they started neglecting themselves. When we think about the company we keep, we tend to focus outward, right? Who's in our lives, what they bring, what they don't bring. But we often don't ask, how am I showing up for them? And this kind of contradicts what I just mentioned, but just hear me out. Are you the reliable friend, the supportive listener, the funny one who always lightens the mood, or are you the friend who maybe holds back, who never really lets people see the real you? If there's a gap between how you're feeling about yourself and how you want to be seen, that can affect the quality of every connection you have. If you think about a time when you were struggling but still showing up for others, what did that look like? Was there a part of you that wanted to be vulnerable to let others in, but you held back? And girlie, how do I say this? We do this because we think it's better to appear strong, or we're worried about burdening others, right? Because as women, in so many societies throughout history, we've been taught to put ourselves to the side. But being real with yourself, doing some introspection, being self aware allows you to show vulnerability. And vulnerability is a gift to the people around you. I promise you, it's a gift. It says, you know what? I trust you enough to let you see me as I am. And that trust, that openness, it not only allows for like deepness in relationships and connections in a way that surface level support and connections could never, but I think it allows us to truly find safety in this life. And it allows us true connection. And I think a lot of us are missing true connection. And something else to consider is whether you feel empowered and safe in your own circle, or whether you feel yourself shrinking to fit into certain roles. Do you feel free to fully be do you feel free to fully be yourself, or are you playing a part, like you're acting because it's what's expected of you? Sometimes we take on these roles out of habit. We take them on because that's what was taught to us since childhood, because that's what's normal for us, because we just think that's just who we are. But if you're always filtering yourself, that can weigh on you over time. And it can create a disconnect that makes you feel unseen, like a shell of yourself. Even to the people that are closest to you within your circle. And it's also worth asking, are you bringing unresolved issues into your own connections and your relationships? If you're holding on to self-criticism or a fear of rejection, you might find yourself putting up walls without even realizing it. I used to be like this, and to an extent I'm still like this, because the walls protect you, but they also keep people at a distance. And this one is, oh, okay. I feel like I just triggered myself because I'm thinking about a lot. But are there moments where you feel you're not fully open to receiving love or support because of something in the past that really left you hurt, or something in the past that really broke you emotionally, that completely shattered you? Reflecting on this can be hard. It can be so hard, but I've learned that it's essential for growing, and it's essential for being fully present with the people that matter most to you. My girlie, think about how you want to be treated by the people in your life. And ask yourself if you're treating yourself that way. Are you giving yourself patience, kindness, compassion? Are you allowing yourself to be loved? When you practice those things towards yourself, it absolutely creates this like ripple effect that impacts everyone around you. And it allows you to be more understanding. It allows you to be more present and more willing to see others as they are, right? Instead of creating these unrealistic expectations for others. And, I just, here's something I want you to reflect on. What would it look like to bring your whole authentic self into every connection, every relationship? What would it feel like to stop hiding, to stop pretending, and to just let people see you fully? Because when you start showing up for yourself, you're not only honoring your own worth, you're creating a space for deeper, for safer, for more meaningful connections with the people who love you, who respect you. And in turn, I think that truly can like transform the company you keep into a circle that truly reflects and supports who you are. Girlie, in today's extremely curated, have to show everyone everything, social media can feel like an extension of our circle, right? And whether you believe it or not, it actually is. Because we're influenced by the people we follow, the content we consume, and even the comments we read. So you have to ask yourself, is your social feed or social feeds a source of healthy inspiration, or are they a source of anxiety and comparison? I forgot what the saying is about comparison. I think it's like comparison is the root of all evil, or something like that. But it's easy to get caught up in the highlight reels, and please know and understand that this is what social media is. It's a virtual curated highlight reel, and in this digital world, seeing everyone else's wins and feeling like you're not measuring up because of the constant comparison you're doing will eventually break you. But you have control over who you allow into that space. You have control over your digital circle. You can unfollow accounts that make you feel less, or ones that trigger negative emotions like comparison. That includes family members and friends, by the way. You absolutely do not have to be following someone in your real life on social media. You don't have to follow all your friends on social media. You don't have to follow all your family on social media. And if not following them causes a rift or a problem in that relationship or connection, then girlie, I don't know what to tell you, but I don't know, that's a relationship I generally think needs to be evaluated by every party involved. But back to my point, follow accounts who uplift, inspire you, who remind you of your own worth in the best way possible. Because building a supportive online community is just as important as building one in real life. We spend so much time on social media, so make sure your online community is supportive of who you are becoming and who you want to be. We know the effects social media has on our mental health, and curating a positive, affirming online space is an act of self care. It's an act of self respect. All right, my girlie, we've covered quite a bit tonight, from friendships to family to even social media. The company you keep shapes your life, which means the company you keep is a reflection of who you are to yourself, who you are to others, and where you're heading. Don't be afraid to reevaluate your relationships as you grow. Be mindful of your digital space, it's as important as your physical circle. And lastly, girlie, sometimes it's you, and you have to be honest with yourself about that. And so I challenge you to take a moment to reflect on the company you keep. Take a look at your circle, from your girlies to your mentors, partner, family, acquaintances, social media feeds. What's their purpose in your life? How does their presence make you feel? What are their actions, not words, towards you? Plus, what vibes and intentions are you giving to those around you? Are you holding others back without even realizing it? Do you take and take and take and take and take from others? To make this reflection easier, because I know it can be incredibly hard, I actually created a free Birds of a Feather worksheet. It's a fun way to map out your current flock and see where you might need to make changes. You can find this free resource in the show notes or the YouTube description box. And before we wrap up, let's talk about next week's episode. Next week, we're diving into the ins and the outs of boundaries for us go getting girlies, especially with the holiday season in full swing. To close out our time this evening, remember your circle reflects you, and it's okay if not every connection or relationship in that circle is deep, but they should always be intentional. Don't forget to sign up for our email newsletter for exclusive content, free resources, and the best holiday goodies. Also, don't miss this episode's deep dive, which is available on Instagram Reels this Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that's it for tonight's episode, my girlie. Thank you for joining me this evening. I'm so glad to have you on this journey. If you've enjoyed this episode, go ahead and tap that follow or subscribe button and leave a review. It lets me and the algorithms know you're really here to grow, learn, and say. You can also find me and Talks with SAE on Instagram at Talks with SAE. And be sure to share this episode and the podcast with your girlies so they can say as well. Again, thank you, my girlie, for joining me, and more importantly, thank you for existing. Until next time, self-love bells.